or whatever we do. But we have to, we cannot ignore history. We have to make obeisance to history. The history is that from 1960 up to the time Nkrumah was overthrown in 1966, he was a despot. He was not good for Ghana. He was terrible for Ghana. The 1960 constitution, which Nkrumah put together, which I have in front of me, has Nkrumah's name buried in the constitution, Article 10.
Correct.
Where it is talking about Kwame Nkrumah as president of Ghana. So it's talking about Kwame Nkrumah as president of Ghana in that Article 10. There's also a bit more. It is in this same 1960 constitution that Nkrumah decided that there was an amendment to the 1960 constitution in 1964. And if you look at the amendment, it will interest you to know that the amendments that was provided in the 1964 amendment included the fact that Kwame Nkrumah was now able to dismiss judges. Yes. And also, yes, he was able to dismiss judges. And also, the national flag of Ghana was changed. He also banned all political parties in 1964. And people were imprisoned. Preventive Detention Act was created in 1958. You might not think of it as a bad law. It is only the usage that you can criticize. Because what happened is that Nkrumah had been attacked by a bomb. And it was becoming very scary between Nkrumah and the opposition. The violence was growing on the part of the opposition, I must say. And Nkrumah needed something that will allow the intelligence agencies to work. So that's why PDA was set up. So in fact, if you look at the usage of PDA, between 1958, when it was set up, and about 1961, it was minimal. But from 1961 to 1964, the PDA was railroading everywhere and every home was afraid. This was the state of affairs in Ghana. Now, because we are not accustomed to our history that much, and all of us, many of us talking today, were not born in that time, we all don't know that, and we are railroaded into Nkrumah as something.
That's a situation where you could be arrested and put in custody without the intervention of a court.
Not just without the intervention of the court, but on the basis that the Minister for Interior is thinking in his mind that you are preparing to do something wrong. This is a fundamental departure from the processes of the jurisprudence of the criminal court. It's just a fundamental and a wicked departure from it, that somebody can think in his head that he suspects that you are doing something wrong and then you are picked up and arrested. This was the state of affairs in Ghana at the time. Now, there was nowhere else to go because if you look at the amendment of the constitution, Nkrumah had made himself a life president.
Correct.
And he had also made CPP the only legitimate party. Now, this is the situation that led many African countries to civil wars in the 80s. Because these leaders in the 60s, a lot of these Nkrumah students who had won independence for their various countries through Nkrumah's efforts, had also become despots and were thinking like that. So Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia and all of those people, they were there till the 80s. Ofebwanye, they were there. And part of the reason why Ghana did not experience those civil wars in the late 80s and the 90s was Kotoka. That Kotoka came in and said, no, we can't do this. The only reasonable way to do was to remove him. How do we test Kotoka's fidelity to the nation and he and his friends? So they decided to do a coup. They took Nkrumah out and they began to rearrange Ghana on the path of another constitutional democracy. And they left office and they left in the hands of the constitutionally elected group of people. I must say that being an apostle of the right-wing philosophy, one thing I've always worried, even as a student, is that why did they ban CPP from the 69 election? I thought that was blatantly wrong. And that is what led to the division in our country that we are still suffering. Busia and his people should really have allowed Nkrumah to run the election. If Nkrumah had come and he had lost the election, Busia had won. Nkrumah would have been minority leader in parliament in 68, 70, 71. And I guess the coup may not have come. Nkrumah may have won elections again in 74. And Nkrumah, if he left as he left and still was part of politics, would now have realized the kinds of things he was doing and why the coup itself was necessary. I'm sure that if you take Nkrumah's brain at 1954, he will support the coup. If in 1954 Nkrumah will support the 1966 coup. Oliver Vomaho, when Akufo-Addo was president, thought that the soldiers should overthrow him because the government was very bad. If Oliver Vomaho had lived in Nkrumah's time, I'm sure he would have been a suicide bomber because it was much worse. Now, this is the state of affairs, and Kotoka was the rescuer. So we grow up later on and see coups, and we say he's also another coup maker. No, but he was a rescuer. The South Africa airport is named after Oliver Reginald Tambo.
That's right.
He was a terrorist on the list of everyone in the world, UN and everybody. But
well, even Mandela was on terrorist
list. The airport
list.
was named after him. So what we are saying is that let's put the history in proper perspective. If after we all have acquainted ourselves with this history and then understood why Kotoka may be considered a hero, for which reason the airport will be named after him, not just a coup, but the kind of circumstance that occurred, then if after all that, the people still want to name...
So that from your point of view, Kotoka will be a liberator. That for a period, for almost 10 years, nobody could breathe in this country. There was nothing like freedom of expression, freedom of association, because Nkrumah had become a terrible despot. Correct?
That's the point. Not just that. The 1960 Constitution, and in Ghana we have had 60 constitution, we are at 69, we are at 79. I dare say that the 69 constitution will work today. If you look at the provisions of it, it will work today. 79 will work today. They should tell us whether 1960 constitution will work today. A constitution that says that the president can sack judges. A constitution that makes no provision for a presidential election. Zero provision for it. The election of the president occurs when the president resigns, when the president is not there, there's nothing like on this date we are going to have an election.
And it's actually named in the constitution.
Yes. Now see what happened. Nkrumah was popular. Yes, he was. In 1951, he won the election. 54, he won the election. 56, he won the election. You cannot win 3 successive elections in those days if you are not popular. But here is the charge. In 1960, Nkrumah knew that if he ran an election on universal adult suffrage, he might not win. So he decided to obscure the election and call it a plebiscite and do something funny. Fair enough.